Somewhere on this broken earth, silence had become the new normal. The world as humanity once knew it no longer existed. A terrifying species of creatures had swept across the planet, tearing down cities, emptying streets, and erasing civilization. What remained was ruin, hollow buildings, abandoned roads, and a sky that no longer felt safe. In the quiet of the countryside, inside a worn-down house, lived a young woman named Blair. She had not spoken to another human being in what felt like forever. Every day was a quiet war. Blair carried one thing with her everywhere, a walkie-talkie. She held onto it not because it was useful every day. It represented a faint, stubborn hope that somewhere out there, someone else had survived. One afternoon, Blair decided she could not stay still any longer. She left her house and walked. She reached an old structure, crumbling and covered in dust, a place where frightened people once gathered. Now it stood empty, forgotten. Blair stepped inside carefully. Her eyes moved slowly through the darkness. Then she found something, a bottle of water, some medicine, small things. But in this world, small things meant everything. She placed them quickly into her bag, and then it hit her, that feeling. The air in the room had shifted. Something, or someone, was watching her. She did not wait to find out what it was. She ran, and she did not stop until she was back inside her own walls. Back home, Blair returned to her routine. Small meals, old books, long hours sitting beside the walkie-talkie, listening to nothing but static. She believed, deep in her heart, that she could not be the only one. Someone else had to be out there. Someone else had to be fighting to stay alive. Far across the land, someone was. His name was Tommy. And survival had cost him more than he could explain. He had been sheltering in a place he thought was secure when the creatures found it. He ran without thinking, without stopping. During the chaos, his bag slipped from his shoulders. That bag had everything: his food, his tools, his supplies. But the creatures were too close. He made his choice and kept running. He spent the night pressed into the darkness, trembling, and when the morning finally came, Tommy did what fear had not allowed him to do at night. He went back. He found the bag. He picked it up, and then he turned on his walkie-talkie. What happened next changed everything for both of them. Tommy's signal reached Blair. Her walkie-talkie crackled to life with a voice, a real, human voice. For the first time in longer than she could remember, they were strangers to each other. But in that moment, they were the most important people in each other's world. Tommy told Blair where he was. He described climbing an old, towering structure shaped like an arrow, with the creatures circling below him, cutting off every exit. Blair listened carefully. She knew the place. She told him about a window, one he might have missed, one that could give him a way out. Tommy found it. He climbed through and escaped. Because of her, he was alive. The next morning, Tommy gathered what remained of his belongings and set out again. When he told Blair he had made it out safely, she felt something she had almost forgotten: relief. She told him what his voice had done for her, how hearing another person speak had made the world feel slightly less impossible. Tommy was curious about her. He asked where she was living. Blair told him about the old abandoned house she had made her shelter, how she had chosen isolation. She admitted something she had rarely admitted to herself, that fear had kept her from going too far, from taking risks, from truly moving forward. Then Tommy told her about a mountain. He described it as high, remote, far from where the creatures roamed. His family had lived near it once, before the world ended. He believed it was safe. When Blair heard that, something awakened in her. She was exhausted from the silence, tired of waiting, tired of surviving alone without a reason. She told Tommy she wanted to go. She wanted to reach that mountain. But before either of them took another step, Blair looked down at the walkie-talkie in her hands and warned him. The battery was running low. They would have to discipline themselves. No more than 3 conversations a day. Tommy agreed. They made a plan to travel separately, toward the mountain and meet each other at the top. Blair packed everything she needed and left. Tommy was already moving. The journey was hard on both of them in different ways. Tommy was hungry, but he rationed carefully. He understood that in a world with no guarantees, patience was not a luxury. It was survival. Blair moved through empty houses along her path, searching kitchens for anything edible, careful not to make a sound. She had learned to hunt. She killed a rabbit and cooked it over an open fire. Later, she caught a fish and did the same. Somewhere along the way, she found a pair of headphones. She plugged them in, and music filled her ears. In a world stripped of almost everything beautiful, music was the one thing that still reached inside her and reminded her she was human. Tommy came across an old broken bus sitting on the road and thought it might hold something useful. But the moment he looked through the glass, he heard sounds from the back, deep, unnatural sounds, and he backed away and ran. Later, resting in a quiet spot, he called Blair on the walkie-talkie. She asked if he had eaten. He had not. She gave him practical advice. Search the empty houses, stay quiet, stay invisible. And then, in the middle of a conversation about survival, Tommy asked her something different. He asked what she would do if they both made it. If they both survived and finally found each other. Where would she want to go? Blair paused before answering. She said New York City. She had always wanted to live there. Her family had talked about it, dreamed about it. Her father had carried that dream until the day he died, and it had never come true. Her voice grew quiet when she mentioned him. She said the only thing she still had of her father was one old photograph. Tommy listened without rushing her. Then she asked him the same question. He was slow to answer. He said he had one memory of his father, a necklace the man used to wear, which Tommy now kept close to himself always. When his father died, Tommy had scattered his ashes into the sea. If he lived through this, he said, he wanted to go back to that water one day and say a proper goodbye. As the day began to fade, Blair told Tommy to find somewhere safe, eat something and rest. They agreed to speak again at 9 that night. Blair kept walking. She came upon a church, empty and still. Inside, she found a woman who spoke in a broken, haunted way. The woman said this was God's punishment, that humans had sinned and the creatures were their consequence. Something in Blair snapped. She told the woman plainly and with anger that no God worth believing in would watch his own children be hunted and killed. She left the church and did not look back. That night, Tommy was searching an empty house for food. A creature appeared directly in his path. He ran and stumbled. Hitting the ground hard, the creature stood over him. Tommy was certain he was about to die, but the creature only stared, then turned and walked away. Tommy sat in the dark afterward, shaking, struggling to breathe. He called Blair and told her what had happened. His voice was heavy with something more than just fear. He told her that when the creatures first arrived, they had taken his entire family, his father, his mother, his sister, all in one night. He had been helpless. He had been alone ever since. He said he did not know who he was surviving for anymore. As he said it, he began to cry, Blair steadied herself and spoke clearly. She told him he was surviving for her. She reminded him of his father, not to bring back grief, but to ask a harder question. Would the man who raised him want to see him give up? Would he want to look down and see his son quit? No, she said. So he had to keep going. He had to have faith. They talked a little longer before falling into their separate silences for the night. When Blair opened her eyes the next morning, there was a creature standing just outside the car window. Before she could process what she was seeing, it attacked, shattering the glass. Blair fought back with everything she had. She grabbed a piece of the broken window and used it as a weapon. Somehow, she survived. She sat on the ground afterward and cried, not from weakness, but from the accumulated weight of everything, every fight, every loss, every day alone. After some time, she picked up the walkie-talkie and called Tommy. She told him what had happened, and then said something that frightened them both more than the attack itself. The creature had come in daylight. These things had always avoided the sun, but now they were changing, adapting, becoming more dangerous in ways that hadn't existed before. Tommy told her they needed to move faster. He said he could reach the mountain summit in roughly a day and a half. She had to push herself to match that. They kept moving. Blair's nerves were raw. She told Tommy over the radio that she was struggling, that the fear was getting inside her head. She asked him to just talk about anything. Tommy spoke to her in a calm, low voice, and his words carried her forward. She crossed a railway track and sat for a few minutes. She took photographs with an old camera she'd been carrying. Not because anyone would ever see them, but because the act of capturing a moment made her feel real, made her feel like a person still living rather than just surviving. Tommy entered a deserted house and found horses inside, which surprised him. Then a girl appeared, thin, hollow-eyed, visibly starving. She pointed at his bag and demanded he hand it over, or she would kill him. Tommy looked at her and felt pity, but he could not give up the bag. It held everything keeping him alive. He refused. The girl screamed. The sound carried through the walls and drew a creature. When the girl saw it, she screamed again, even louder. The creature moved toward the sound. Tommy pressed himself into the corner and watched helplessly as the creature killed her. He ran the moment there was an opening, and he did not stop. He tried to reach Blair on the walkie-talkie. She did not respond. He assumed she had switched it off to save power. In reality, Blair had been caught in her own crisis. After leaving the railway track, a creature had cornered her with nowhere to run. She had been preparing to fight when an old man appeared with a weapon and killed it. He took Blair to his home, treated her wound, and made her tea. She asked why he had helped her. He smiled and said there was nothing else he could have done. He told her his wife had been taken by the creatures. He had escaped but lived with the weight of that every day. He said simply that at least she was no longer suffering in this broken world. Later, Blair contacted Tommy and told him about the old man. Tommy's first instinct was caution. He asked if she really trusted him, reminding her of the girl who had threatened him that same morning. Blair said yes. She trusted James. He could have left her today, but he hadn't. She told Tommy that if they survived all of this, she wanted a quiet life, a farm somewhere far from everything, with no more fear. Then Blair told Tommy something she had kept buried for a long time. One night, a creature had attacked her and her mother while they slept. Her mother had told her to run. Blair hadn't been able to leave. She had watched her mother suffer, and she had had only one bullet left in her gun. She used it. She ended her mother's pain the only way she could. When she finished speaking, There was silence on the line. Tommy told her gently and without hesitation that she had done the right thing. That letting someone stay in that kind of pain was its own cruelty. James, who had been listening, added his own words. He told Blair that what she had done had taken more courage than most people would ever have to find in their lifetime. Before Blair left, James gave her a bag filled with food and water. He told her to head north, that her friend was waiting. He said his door would always be open if she ever needed somewhere to rest, though his tone carried the quiet certainty of someone who did not expect to be around much longer. Blair thanked him and stepped back into the world. Meanwhile, Tommy had found a moment of stillness when the darkness moved. A creature came at him from the shadows. He grabbed the largest stone he could find and hit the creature with everything he had until it stopped moving. Afterward, he tried to call Blair. No signal. Her battery had died. His had too. They were both moving now, without the comfort of each other's voices, pushing forward through silence and fear with nothing at the destination ahead. Tommy found a small house and went inside. He was exhausted beyond words. He let himself sleep. In the morning, there was a knock at the door. He opened it. Blair was standing there for a long moment. Neither of them spoke, and then they held on to each other, having survived something that should not have been survivable, completely. And without any words left to say, they decided to stay. They talked for hours. Making quiet plans, they let themselves believe the worst was behind them. But then, in the middle of the day, two creatures approached the house. Tommy and Blair ran inside and locked every door. Blair looked out the window. These things were no longer waiting for a night. The rules had changed. Tommy looked round the room and spotted gas cylinders stacked in a corner. He told Blair his plan. They turned on the gas and waited. When the creatures broke through and entered the house, Tommy and Blair ignited it and ran up through the back. The explosion shook the ground. The house burned with the creatures inside. They stood together watching the fire. Tommy looked at what remained and said it quietly. They would build another one. That was what people did. They kept building. And then a sound came from the mountain above them, something enormous. They looked up and saw a shape at the summit, a creature unlike anything they had encountered, massive and terrifying, standing still as if it had been waiting for them. Blair and Tommy looked at each other. The fear was real. The danger was unlike anything before. But so was something else, for the first time since the world had ended. Neither of them was alone. Whatever came next, they would face it together.